December 1944. The Ardennes forest. Hitler's final gamble begins to unfold across the frozen Belgian landscape, but this story doesn't start there. It starts in a place most people have never heard of. Lochsheldrake, New York, mid-1930s, a small town where winter comes early and stays late, where the snow doesn't just fall, it settles into everything, into the fields, into the bones, into the silence of a boy who learned too young that the world doesn't owe you anything. Francis Sherman Curry, an orphan, not the kind from storybooks with tragic backstories and redemption arcs, just a kid without parents in a world that kept moving whether you had them or not. He'd stand at the edge of town, watching the horizon like it held answers. But horizons don't talk back. They just stretch on, indifferent and endless. Another boy once asked him, "You staying here?" Curry looked at him, then back at that endless white. "No. I'm leaving as soon as I can." Not anger in his voice, not hope either, just fact. The way you'd say the sky is grey or winter is cold. Some people are born into their lives. Others are born watching them from the outside. Curry was the second kind. Europe is burning, the Pacific is drowning in blood, and America needs bodies. Young bodies. Bodies willing to step into the machinery of war and hope they come out the other side. Curry walks into the recruiting office 3 months before his 18th birthday. The recruiter doesn't ask questions, doesn't look too closely at the date. The country needs soldiers more than it needs to check birth certificates. Francis Sherman Curry signs his name. Steady hand. No hesitation. The recruiter asks, "Why are you joining, son?" Curry doesn't say to serve my country or to stop tyranny. He doesn't say anything about duty or honor or the speeches they play on the radio. He says, "Because I need to go somewhere." The recruiter nods. He's heard worse reasons. He's heard better ones too, but honest reasons, those are rare. Curry wasn't looking for glory. He was looking for an exit. The army just happened to be the door. Training camp. Mud and shouting and the smell of gun oil. Push-ups until your arms shake. Runs until your lungs burn. Learning to field strip a rifle in the dark. Learning to dig a foxhole. Learning to kill. But Curry, he didn't have to learn the most important thing. He already knew how to be cold, not the weather kind of cold. The other kind, the kind that lets you pull a trigger without flinching, the kind that keeps your hands steady when everyone else is shaking. His drill instructor notices. The other recruits notice. One veteran already shipping back for a second tour watches Curry on the range. Perfect grouping, no wasted movement, like he'd been doing it his whole life. The veteran mutters to another, "That kid's got ice in his veins, nothing rattles him." Think he'll make it? Make it? Hell, I think he'll scare the Germans more than they'll scare him. They laugh, but there's something else in the laugh. Something uncertain, because men who feel nothing are useful in war, but they're also unsettling. They remind you that maybe courage isn't the opposite of fear, maybe it's the absence of everything. Summer 1944. Curry ships out to Europe, France first, the hedgerows, the bocage, country that eats tanks and spits out bodies. He's assigned to the 30th Infantry Division, Old Hickory, they call it, named after Andrew Jackson, tough, stubborn. The kind of division that doesn't break. Curry fits right in. Not because he's loud or brave or inspiring, because he does what needs doing without being asked twice. His squad leader puts it simply, Curry doesn't complain, doesn't panic, just does the job. That's high praise in war. The guys who survive aren't always the heroes. They're the ones who show up, do the work, and don't make extra trouble for anyone. But something else is building. Something neither Curry nor his division knows yet. December 16, 1944. Hitler launches Operation Wacht am Rhein, the Watch on the Rhine, his last great offensive. 250,000 German soldiers, hundreds of tanks, the best divisions he has left, including the Waffen-SS. Their orders are clear. Break through the American lines, reach Antwerp, cut the Allied armies in half, force a negotiated peace. It will become known as the Battle of the Bulge. The largest and bloodiest battle American forces will fight in World War II. But before the history books, before the statistics, before the monuments, there's just snow and fog and the sound of tanks moving through the forest. And there's Malmedy, a small Belgian town, a crossroads, a bridge. 5 days before the main offensive, SS troops massacre American prisoners there. 84 men, lined up in a field, machine-gunned, left to freeze in the snow. The message is clear. This isn't war by the rules anymore. Surrender means nothing. Mercy is a fairy tale. When the American troops hear about Malmedy, something changes. The fear gets sharper, but so does the anger. Curry hears the reports, sees the photographs, reads the survivors and accounts. His face doesn't change, but something in his eyes does. Someone asks, "You scared?" Curry looks at the map, at the little town of Malmedy circled in red. "No," he says. "Toys, but they should be." December 21st, 1944. Curry's unit receives new orders. Defend the bridge at Malmedy. The Germans are coming. Intelligence says a full division. Tanks, infantry, artillery support. The bridge cannot fall. If it does, the entire American line collapses. Curry checks his rifle, his ammunition, his bazooka. The other men are nervous, checking and rechecking equipment, writing letters home, praying. Curry just waits. Because he learned something a long time ago in Lochsheldrake, staring at that frozen horizon. The world doesn't care if you're ready. It comes for you anyway. And when it does, you either stand or you disappear. Francis Sherman Curry had already decided which one he'd be. 4 in the morning, December 21st. The kind of dark that makes you forget the sun ever existed. Curry stands at his position, breath visible in the frozen air, the bridge behind him, the forest ahead. Somewhere in that darkness, the enemy is moving. The snow has stopped falling, everything is silent, not peaceful silent, the other kind, the kind that comes before something breaks. His commanding officer had been clear, hold this bridge, no matter what. Curry had nodded. What else was there to say? The other men in his unit are spread thin, too thin. Everyone knows it. You don't need to be a general to understand the math. A handful of soldiers against what intelligence says is coming. The numbers don't work. But numbers are just numbers. They don't account for will. They don't account for the kind of man who grew up with nothing and learned that survival isn't about hope, it's about refusing to quit. The first sound comes at 4:17 a.m., low, mechanical, the unmistakable rumble of tank engines. One of the younger soldiers, barely 19, turns to Curry. "You hear that?" Curry doesn't answer. He's already moving to get a better view. Through the pre-dawn darkness, shapes begin to emerge. Not one tank, not two. A column, bumper to bumper, as the report would later say. German armor rolling through the forest like a steel river. Someone whispers, "Jesus Christ, how many?" Too many. That's how many. But Curry's mind isn't counting. It's calculating. Distance, angles, weak points. He'd learned in training that panic is just wasted energy. Fear is information. Use it or it uses you. The lead tank is a Panther, 60 tons of German engineering. Its gun could punch through almost anything the Americans had. Curry watches the commander's hatch, watches how the tank moves, watches the infantry following behind. He raises his rifle, aims. The shot echoes across the frozen landscape. The German tank commander drops. For a moment, everything stops. The tank column hesitates. Confusion ripples through the German lines. Who fired? Where from? How many Americans are out there? Curry is already moving to his next position. The tanks begin to fan out, trying to identify targets. Their main guns traverse left and right. But in the darkness, with the muzzle flash already faded, Curry has disappeared into the landscape he'd spent days memorizing. Another shot. Another German officer falls. The enemy is no longer advancing confidently. They're cautious now, careful. Because somewhere in this frozen hell is a ghost who kills with precision, but caution only buys time, and time is running out. The German commander on the ground makes a decision. Push through. Overwhelm the position with force. These are Americans, green troops who'll break under pressure. The tanks surge forward. Curry runs, not away, toward. There's a barn 50 yards from his position. Inside, wrapped in canvas and covered in frost, is a bazooka. He'd stashed it there 2 days ago just in case. Bullets kick up snow around his feet. A machine gun from one of the tanks has spotted him. The rounds come close, too close. But close doesn't count in war. He slides into the barn like a baseball player stealing home. His hands work fast. Unwrap the bazooka. Check the rocket. Load. Prime. The barn door explodes inward. Wooden splinters fill the air. A tank shell has found its mark. The entire structure groans. Curry doesn't flinch. He steps to the opening, shoulders the weapon, and fires. The rocket streaks across the snow. It hits the lead panther in its side armor, the weakest point. The explosion is immediate and catastrophic. Fire blooms orange against the white landscape. The tank lurches, stops, begins to burn. The column behind it has to halt, can't push through a burning tank. Can't maneuver off the narrow forest road. They're bottlenecked. Curry drops the bazooka, grabs another one, already loaded, already ready. A second tank tries to reverse, to create space. But Curry is faster. Another shot, another hit, more fire, more smoke, more chaos. The German infantry begins to dismount. They know now. There's someone out here who knows what he's doing. Someone who's turning their advantage into a death trap. Curry moves again. Never stays in one place. That's how you die. He reaches a position where he'd cached grenades, anti-tank grenades, heavy, unwieldy, but devastating at close range. A half-track is trying to flank around the burning tanks. It's loaded with infantry. If it gets through, the bridge falls. Curry waits, lets it come closer, closer. He throws the grenade. It lands perfectly in the open top of the half-track. The explosion lifts men into the air like broken dolls. The surviving Germans are shouting now, confused, scared. They'd been told this would be easy. A quick breakthrough, weak resistance. Instead, they're facing something they didn't expect. Not an army. Something worse. A man who fights like he has nothing to lose because he never had anything to begin with. But the Germans have numbers, and numbers, eventually, matter. Curry's ammunition is running low. He's down to his rifle and whatever he can scavenge from the battlefield. That's when he hears it. American voices, screaming. A group of his fellow soldiers are pinned down near a damaged half-track, wounded, unable to move. The Germans are advancing on their position. Curry looks at the bridge, looks at his orders. Hold the bridge. That's the mission. But there are men dying 50 yards away. He makes his choice. Curry runs through the kill zone. Bullets snap past his head. Snow erupts around his feet. A round tears through his jacket but misses flesh. He reaches the first wounded soldier, grabs him, starts dragging him back toward cover. The soldier screams, "Leave me! You'll get killed!" Curry doesn't answer, just pulls harder. He gets the man to safety, goes back for the next one. A German soldier appears around the corner of the burning half-track. Close, too close. Curry's rifle comes up, single shot. The German falls, second wounded man secured. But there's a third, the kid. The 19-year-old who'd asked about the tank sounds earlier. He's hit bad, leg torn apart by shrapnel. Curry moves toward him. The kid is crying, not from pain, but from fear. "I can't move. I can't." Curry reaches him, hoists him onto his shoulders in a fireman's carry. The weight is immense. The kid is heavy. The snow is deep. And every German in that forest is trying to kill him. But Curry walks, one step, then another, then another. A bullet grazes his arm. He feels the hot sting but doesn't stop. He reaches cover, lays the kid down. The medic scrambles over. The kid grabs Curry's hand. "Why'd you come back? We're gonna die anyway." Curry looks at him. For the first time in hours, his expression changes. Not quite a smile. Something harder. "Not today," he says. The German advance has stalled. 3 tanks burning. Infantry scattered. The element of surprise gone. But they're regrouping. Officers are shouting orders. They'll come again. And this time they'll know what they're facing. Curry climbs onto the damaged half-track. The .50 caliber machine gun is still intact. He checks the ammunition belt. Half full, good enough. The Germans come. Curry opens fire. The .50 cal roars like thunder. Tracer rounds cut through the dawn. Every burst is controlled. 3 to 5 rounds. Adjust. Fire again. German soldiers dive for cover. Some don't make it. The machine gun runs dry. Curry drops down, grabs an M1 Garand from a dead soldier and keeps firing. An enemy squad tries to flank. Curry sees them, switches to a captured Panzerfaust, German anti-tank weapon, fires it at their position. The explosion scatters them. He's using everything now. American weapons, German weapons, whatever he can reach. His hands move with mechanical efficiency. Load, aim, fire, move. Repeat. The sun is starting to rise. The darkness that protected him is fading, but so is the German assault. Their officers realize the cost. Too many dead, too many wounded. The bridge was supposed to fall in minutes. It's been hours. A German commander makes the call, pull back, regroup. They'll try again with artillery support. The tanks reverse, the infantry withdraws, the forest falls silent again. Curry stands alone on the battlefield, surrounded by smoke and bodies and the wreckage of war. His uniform is torn. Blood, some his, most not, stains the fabric. His hands shake slightly, not from fear, from exhaustion. Behind him, the bridge still stands. One of his officers runs up, stares at the scene. 3 destroyed tanks, dozens of German bodies. The entire assault, broken. Curry, what the hell did you do? Curry looks at the bridge, then at the forest where the Germans disappeared. Held the line, he says simply. The officer shakes his head in disbelief. Intelligence said a full company was hitting this position, maybe more. Curry picks up his rifle, checks it, still functional. They did, he says. They're just not here anymore. The news spreads fast, up the chain of command, through the ranks. The story of the soldier who held Malmedy, who fought like an army of one, who refused to break. Some call it impossible. Others call it heroic. Curry calls it Tuesday, because when you grow up with nothing, when survival is all you've ever known, heroism isn't about glory, it's about doing what needs doing, no matter the cost. The bridge at Malmedy holds, the German advance stalls. The Allied line doesn't collapse, and Francis Sherman Curry, the orphan from Loch Sheldrake who just wanted to go somewhere, becomes the ghost of Malmedy, the man who fought an army and won. The silence after battle is different from the silence before. It's heavier, thicker, like the air itself is exhausted. Curry sits on a destroyed German half-track, his rifle across his knees. Around him, the snow is no longer white. It's stained with oil, blood, and ash. Smoke rises from the burning tanks like dark prayers to a god who stopped listening hours ago. His hands are steady now. The shaking has stopped. But there's a ringing in his ears that won't quit. Artillery, gunfire, explosions. The sounds are gone, but the memory of them remains, echoing in the spaces between thoughts. A lieutenant approaches, young officer, probably fresh from West Point. He's staring at Curry like he's trying to solve an equation that doesn't add up. Private Curry. Curry looks up, doesn't speak, just waits. I need you to tell me what happened here. Curry glances at the battlefield. At the evidence scattered across 100 yards of Belgian forest, we held the bridge. I can see that, but how? Intelligence reports indicated enemy strength of, doesn't matter what intelligence said, matters what showed up. The lieutenant is quiet for a moment. He's seen combat. Not much, but enough to know that what happened here isn't normal. Men don't hold positions like this. Positions like this fall. That's mathematics. That's reality. Except when they don't. Division Command wants a full report. General Hobbs wants to see you personally. Curry stands. His body protests. Muscles that have been clenched for hours finally releasing. He's 20 years old but feels ancient. When? Now. The meeting is brief. General Hobbs, commander of the 30th Infantry Division, sits behind a field desk covered in maps and reports. He looks tired. Everyone looks tired. The Battle of the Bulge is eating the Allied army alive. But when Curry enters, Hobbs stands. Private Curry, I've been reading the reports from Malmedy. Curry says nothing. What's there to say? Hobbs continues. Your commanding officer says you single-handedly repelled a German armored column, destroyed 3 tanks, killed or wounded dozens of enemy soldiers, rescued 3 wounded men under fire, and held a critical bridge against overwhelming odds. Yes, sir. He also says you did it alone. Curry thinks about that, about the other men who fought, who died, who bled into the snow. I had help, sir. Hobbs shakes his head. Not according to witnesses. They say you moved through that battlefield like one of them called you a ghost, said the Germans couldn't kill you, said you were everywhere at once. I was just doing my job, sir. Hobbs studies him, trying to understand, trying to reconcile the quiet kid in front of him with the impossible action report on his desk. Son, do you understand what you've done? You've held a position that should have fallen in 15 minutes. The German advance through this sector has been delayed by days, days we desperately needed. That bridge you saved, it's keeping our supply lines open. Without it, this entire flank collapses. Curry shifts his weight, uncomfortable, not from the wounds, though there are several, none serious enough to matter, but from the attention. I just didn't want them to cross, sir. Hobbs laughs. It's not a happy sound. It's the laugh of a man who's seen too much death and suddenly found something absurd in the middle of it all. You didn't want them to cross, so you stopped a panzer division. By yourself. They weren't all panzers, sir. Just 3 tanks and the rest was infantry, and, Private Curry, I'm putting you in for the Medal of Honor. The words hang in the air. Curry doesn't react, doesn't smile, doesn't thank him. He just nods, because medals don't mean anything to a man who never expected to survive the day. 6 weeks later, the ceremony. Eisenhower himself pins the medal to Curry's chest. Photographers snap pictures. Officers smile. The story of the ghost of Malmedy spreads through the ranks like wildfire. A lone soldier who stopped an army, who refused to break, who became legend. Curry stands at attention, his face expressionless. When Eisenhower speaks to him privately afterward, he tells Curry that his actions shortened the war, that his courage saved lives, that history will remember him. Curry thanks him politely, properly. Then he goes back to his tent, takes off the medal and puts it in a box. Someone asks him later why he doesn't wear it. It's heavy, Curry says. He doesn't mean the weight of the metal. The war ends. Curry goes home. Not to Lochsheldrake. There's nothing for him there. Just ghosts and memories and snow that never melts. He settles somewhere quiet, works with veterans, the ones who came back broken, the ones who couldn't sleep, the ones who flinched at loud noises and saw enemies in shadows. He understands them. They understand him. One day, a young veteran asks him, "How did you do it? How did you keep fighting when you knew you were probably going to die?" Curry thinks about that morning, about the cold, about the choice to stand rather than run. "It wasn't that I didn't have fear," he says slowly. "It's that I didn't let it make my decisions." The young veteran nods. But he doesn't really understand. Not yet. Maybe he will someday. Years pass. Decades. The world moves on. The ghost of Malmedy becomes a story, then a legend, then a footnote in history books that fewer people read every year. But in certain circles, his name persists. Joe creates an action figure. Video games feature missions inspired by his stand. Military academies study his tactics. Curry never comments on any of it. He lives quietly. No interviews. No book deals. No speaking tours. Because heroes, real heroes, don't need the world to know what they did. They just need to know they did it. Francis Sherman Curry dies in his sleep at 83. Peaceful, quiet, the way he lived after the war. But on a cold morning in December, every December, veterans gather at the bridge in Malmedy. They stand in the snow. They remember. They remember the boy from Lochsheldrake who became a ghost, who stood alone, who refused to break. The Germans thought they were facing a battalion that frozen morning in 1944. They were wrong. They were facing something far more dangerous, a man who had nothing to lose and everything to prove, a man who understood that sometimes one person, standing in the right place at the right time, can change everything. The bridge still stands. So does the memory. 50 years after Malmedy, a veterans' rehabilitation center. Somewhere in America where the snow still falls the way it did in Lochsheldrake, an old man sits across from a young soldier. The soldier is 22, back from a war that nobody understands. His hands shake. His eyes don't focus right. The nightmares won't stop. The old man is Francis Sherman Curry, 80 years old now, still quiet, still watchful. The young soldier asks, "How did you do it? How did you not break?" Curry is silent for a long moment. Outside, snow begins to fall, soft, steady, like it always does. "I broke," he says finally. "Everyone breaks. The question isn't if, it's what you do after. The young soldier looks at him, really looks, and he sees it, the weight behind those calm eyes. The cost of being the ghost of Malmedy. Does it get easier? Curry watches the snow, remembers another snowfall, another lifetime. No, he says honestly. But you get stronger at carrying it. The young soldier nods. It's not the answer he wanted, but it's the answer he needed. They sit together in silence, two soldiers separated by decades and wars, but connected by the same burden, the weight of survival, the guilt of coming home, the question that never leaves, why me? Curry stands slowly, puts a hand on the young man's shoulder. You did what you had to do. That's enough. It has to be enough. He walks away, leaves the young soldier sitting there with his ghosts, because that's what heroes do. They carry their weight, they help others carry theirs, and they never ask for credit. The snow keeps falling. The bridge at Malmedy still stands, and somewhere in the silence between memory and legend, Francis Sherman Curry remains what he always was. Not a ghost, just a man who refused to quit.